Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things Money. And today we're going to talk about the internet disruption and how that is affecting us all, not in terms of usage of internet, but also in terms of loss in productivity, loss in incomes, and loss in output, essentially affecting us in pure economic terms. Today we have Asfandyar, who has extensive experience in e-commerce and other allied areas. Hello, Asfandyar. How are you doing today?
Hello, Ammar. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Aswanya, so tell us what's really happening with the internet and how is that affecting us in pure economic terms?
Sure, I'll be glad to. It's a very pressing issue. At the moment, for the last few days, that we've seen serious disruption in connectivity of internet, especially WhatsApp, as well as internet on the whole. And I think this is primarily on the mobile broadband side, which is primarily what people use, whether it's freelancers, a lot of people working from home in IT companies, other companies, even if they're not involved necessarily in the IT field, uh, export, domestic commerce, all over the place, and domestic companies themselves, even in their offices, were finding connectivity issues. So and this is not just now, it's been in the last 6 months on and off, we've had these issues come up again and again, whether it's internet outages, whether it's a slowdown because of some firewall testing or whatever it is. But in the end of the day, the economic impact that we are seeing in the e-commerce space, in the retail space, in the export space, and so on, is that when you look at it segment-wise, in the export side, we've got the services exports, the goods exports. So in our case, for example, there are IT companies, there are freelancers that are also doing e-commerce of services. So they're having major issues in terms of connectivity with each other, with their clients abroad, in terms of whether that's virtual software, virtual meeting softwares like Zoom, Skype, Google, etc. Especially WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp is the worst affected right now, where we have to communicate to clients and customers, and that's I think the biggest disruption. Freelancers obviously are affected by this most of all because they've also being not being able to deliver their projects, which are time sensitive, and that's also leading to a loss of credibility because what's happening is that they are marketplaces like Fiverr, Upwork are also making them unavailable for their own good, perhaps, but also for the client's good because of internet disruptions that they are experiencing through their platforms. So that's on the export side. On the domestic commerce side, we're also seeing big issues in terms of connectivity. On the mobile side, for example, we're looking at e-commerce companies, retail companies, even ride hailing, because you've got people who need to share location on WhatsApp, share a picture, share video for business purposes, and that those issues are very badly impacted at the moment with the disruption, both of the slowdown of internet as well as especially the disruption and the lack of being able to use WhatsApp and all its features.
So, any serious business, I would think, which export oriented, or even if a serious freelancer, they would largely have a fixed line connection. I believe fixed line connections are doing fine. So, do you think we're conflating a lot of things in just one go? And even when there is internet disruption, it's not like just complete blackout. Yes, there are spikes and there are troughs, but overall, just things go along fine. I mean, again, not perfect, but things are still moving on. So my question again, I've been thinking about this. Does that really result in a loss of economic output? Yes, some delay for sure, not the ideal scenario, but complete loss of economic output, is that really there? Because if I'm an export services company, I would have a fixed line, I would in fact have a dedicated fixed line, and those are working just fine. I mean, yes, I totally agree with the ride hailing and the domestic commerce bit, the communication bit, but even there are alternatives for that as well. Do you think that the whole economic loss argument has been blown out of proportion here?
It's like you mentioned, the economic impact is tough to measure, definitely. Where is the impact happening? Who's affected the more? Who's affected less? But I think there's definitely a case to be made for people who use, because mobile penetration, as you know, is much higher than fixed line. Yes, fixed line, you have people who are using Wi-Fi as well, right? In the offices or in maybe public places or other places where they work. But I think mobile broadband is the worst affected, and that is the primary people who use mobile broadband are number one, in my opinion, freelancers. Okay, their fixed line access to fixed line is not the same as large offices or in the main urban centers. They're always on and off mobile. networks. I mean, even sitting in my office, sometimes I have to put on the mobile because the internet is down. But that's a rare case. But I think mobile broadband is the biggest issue. I completely agree. So freelancers as well as people within software companies and other companies who are working from home or on the move. So if they're on the move and they're working in a lot of cases where people are working, after hours, during hours, and out and about, and they're using WhatsApp especially. So I think WhatsApp is the issue is mobile broadband and the usage of WhatsApp, which is being limited at the moment. So you would not. Yes, I agree that we would not be looking at the entire economic landscape that is impacted badly, but there are certain segments which are worse hit, and others that perhaps are doing perfectly fine.
So this is what I'm thinking about here. If we take WhatsApp out of the equation, suddenly everything's just fine, right? Yes, speeds are slow, but it's not like email has stopped working, or Signal has stopped working, or Telegram has stopped working. Yes, the your primary means of communication that is impacted. So there is an option to substitute. Again, not the best foot forward, but there are options. There are substitutions available. So, are you seeing businesses actually substituting one service for the other?
And one point on what you said, yes, WhatsApp, but at the same time, mobile speeds. So mobile speeds are very badly affected. So even when you're connecting to any call, you can't even get the audio on the call. You can't get. I'm talking about call through Zoom or other tools. So mobile speeds in general are very bad. That we have seen in the last week and off and on. To your other point regarding alternatives, yes, I mean there are alternatives, but I think that is something that we don't have local alternatives, for example, of WhatsApp. I mean, you have the likes of Telegram, Signal, but the penetration of those are non-existent especially in the business sphere. So I think that alternative is being now very seriously looked at. But I think that also depends in a lot of cases when we're talking about using WhatsApp. It's not just about one-to-one within. You also have whatever your client or customer is using on a daily basis, right? So I mean, I can't force somebody to say, no, you need to communicate to me on Signal or Telegram instead of WhatsApp. They'll be like, excuse me, that's not. I don't even know how to use that, for example. So I think that this is something we need to very seriously look at. We are not China where they have alternate already. We are not other economies where they have their own homegrown solutions. So we are generally lacking a lot of homegrown solutions when it comes to whether it's social media, whether it's communication apps and other tools. As far as emails and internet, that's honestly speaking, that's still also an issue with the internet slowdowns and the spikes and the loss of and the packets and the ping issues. So we are seeing disruption. It's right now in that area, it's more of a nuisance rather than it being a complete disruption. But I think alternatives, we don't have that many, and there's not that much awareness of it either.
All right, this makes sense. So you're also involved in a number of e-commerce ventures, have been involved. Have you seen any drop in e-commerce throughput over the last few weeks? Drop in shipments, drop in sales? Has there been any of those things?
Yeah, we've seen a little bit of a dip. We've seen but not as big a dip perhaps as one would expect. When I looked at the numbers and we asked people around, they said maybe around 10%, 10-15% drop. Based on the overall situation, primarily probably because of usage of mobiles and the apps. For example, social media advertising. We're seeing a drop in that because people are obviously the usage of social media is on mobiles is much higher, of course, and that we're seeing a bit of a drop there on the e-commerce side. In terms of obviously that results in orders and things also being slow. On the international side, when we look at e-commerce exports, the orders and everything are there, and we're not seeing an immediate impact there, but we're seeing communication problems. So communication problems for teams, for people to communicate with their customers on WhatsApp or other tools. We see that as a problem, which will have a longer term effect if you're not able to service people properly, because then they won't be coming back to you. They'll say your service is not good enough. I'm not going to buy from you again. I'm not going to take your services again. So there are some impacts that we are seeing immediately, and some we will see, in my opinion, if this continues over a longer period of time, which will actually probably be a bigger impact, depending on the segment.
What is the way forward here?
I think a way forward, it would be sort of transparency on whatever is happening, because this is coinciding, of course, with whatever the government is doing to the internet or upgrading their web monitoring system or the firewall and so on. So we need, I think, business and everybody deserves transparency of how long disruptions will last, which platform will be affected, what are the alternatives, to work together with all the industry to figure out sort of what are the timelines. Because if right now there's none of the sort. So if we have clarity, transparency, I think we'll be able to plan better, communicate better to client, customers, to colleagues, to business partners, everybody. Right? Number one is transparency. Right. Number two is that we need to be very careful about any changes we do make to the entire sort of internet ecosystem, infrastructure, or otherwise, of what the collateral damage can be, because we're seeing collateral damage in the moment that on and off has been happening, not just now, but in the past couple of months as well. And if this continues moving forward, then I think you're going to see bigger and bigger impact moving forward. So I think these two things are important.
All right, this makes sense. So if you're an e-commerce business, so I think we can split the whole digital economy in a few areas. You've got your export entities who just export. You've got your freelancers. You've got your e-commerce, and then you've got let's say ride-hailing services, food-hailing services, so on and so forth. Let's say the whole their app relationship. So how do you think all of these guys are evolving, let's say, and what will they do to ensure that their business models become more robust, even in presence of internet disruptions? I'm just thinking in terms of a worst case or a stress scenario where, the disruption is there, speeds are slowed down. How do you think business models will evolve, or do you think there will be a gradual shutdown of businesses as well, which will hurt the economy across the board?
There aren't many alternatives. I mean, when you're looking at when we had internet issues earlier, and you had WhatsApp also working all right, which is a very big part of everybody's life. I mean, how many hours does everybody spend on WhatsApp considered for personal or business reasons? So I think an alternative for that we don't have at the moment. So what are people going to do? Are they going to use SMS? Are they going to do something else? I mean, we don't have an alternative. So I see that being a big problem. I don't think we have something to adapt to right now until there's a fast adoption of other messaging apps. I think as far as so business models, if you ask me, number one, you're already going to see some sort of you talk about larger businesses, they're going to find ways to maybe I don't know if they can physically move out of the country, but you're going to see certain changes where people are going to maybe divide their risk. Now freelancers don't have many options, I mean, when you go to freelancers have to use what they have to use. So then maybe their competitiveness, I think what we'll see is maybe competitiveness being affected. How quick you are to respond, because freelancers are answering day and night, working on their projects. Now, if they're not able to work at the same speed, so perhaps they will lose some competitiveness. Same goes for exporters. If you're not going to be communicating as fast, but you're going to try to find other solutions, which right now, in my opinion, don't exist, I think you're going to see not necessarily shut down, but I think you will see a loss of business in multiple areas. When we're looking at ride hailing, I mean, you're in that sense, I think the good part is that within the apps themselves, there's already tracking, there's already able to communicate. It's not as robust as what WhatsApp is, but it's there, it exists. People are in some cases using it. So I think those apps themselves will start becoming, and have already started to become, messaging apps for those particular use cases. So I think you'll see stuff like that happening. I mean, you can, in my opinion, I hope that we can find a way where you can have more localized, for the domestic commerce bit, have more localized messaging apps or solutions, which can be done. We had some in the past, but they didn't fare too well. We have also in the works, we see the government testing Beep, their own made messaging app, which is being, I think, going to be rolled out for government uses only first, and then perhaps down the line for citizens. But we'll see how that goes. But I think this is best done within the private sector itself. But it needs, now people should take it seriously, in my opinion. But internationally, I think it will be a tougher one for us, because people are used to using what they're used to using, and if you're not using the same thing or you're impacted, then it's going to be more problematic.
Yeah. So on messaging apps, do you think a homegrown solution is the right way forward? I mean, do we even have the scale for that? Can we even get the scale for it? I mean, the government likes doing a lot of things, but I mean, there's a reason why it doesn't have a stellar track record of doing the same. I mean, I'd rather have Slack for government than, let's say, something called Beep for that matter. But do you think that is the right approach, and whether we can ever get scale for any such intervention?
I think if you don't have WhatsApp, what you will have you don't have an alternative. People will have to go in that direction. So I think it's more about necessity, and that scale will develop just like WhatsApp scale is there. So I think there's definitely a case for homegrown, but it needs to be done over time, right? I mean, it takes time. It takes a lot of tech money as well, and I don't think the government should do it for sure. I mean, maybe they're planning it for their own data security needs, but I think this needs to be done on our side. That won't solve every problem, and it won't be as robust. But in my opinion, there is a case. Just like there's a case for our own social media platforms as well, in my opinion, especially for advertising and other means, because we've got a lot of money going out of the country. But that's another story.
Yeah, all right. So, just wrapping this up, Asfandyar, what do you see is because you got a lot of experience in e-commerce, what do you see the future of e-commerce in Pakistan, particularly with the prevalence of a cash-based economy and a lot of friction that comes with it? What do you see is the future, and how do you think we can accelerate the same?
I think that's very pertinent, very interesting. In fact, I think the government is working on proposals for cash economy. Multiple stakeholders have submitted many proposals on that. I think the core issue is the fact that we need to have the likes of Rust and Rust P2M especially rolled out much faster. It has to be low cost, and at the same time, you have to look at the tax structure as well. I mean, already you've got, interesting enough, when you look at cash, you've already, if you can give digital solutions like Rafts on delivery and other options to the consumer at the time for e-commerce at the time of delivery, I think that can change a lot. But that needs more work on the logistics side as well as the payment provider side. Secondly,
Just to add
on
it,
the
sorry to intervene, Sonia. Why isn't this happening? It's been out for at least 2 years at this point. Why are the logistic companies and the e-commerce service providers evolving to get to that stage where you can just have a QR and someone can just scan the QR and that payment will be done? Cash on delivery is a massive, massive pain for everything. Why isn't the industry, or why isn't the private sector evolving to get to that stage?
I think there are a few reasons. If I break it down, one is that merchants want to work on cash to evade tax, in my opinion. Number one. Number two, logistics providers themselves don't want to necessarily get documented because they have to pay taxes on their cut of those deliveries. Third aspect, I think, is the actual rollout of this. I mean, if you have to roll this out, you have to roll it out ideally not machines but mobile POS, and find a way, or have QR codes on each box and so on. So I think it's also a tech issue as well as an adoption issue for riders to also be trained and to be incentivized to make sort of these things happen. And as well as I don't think the financial institutions, the banks, have really looked at P2M very seriously, because P2P, as in person-to-person transfer, which is actually growing very fast and also being used for e-commerce and retail in the case of small merchants. I think they are not looking to be very interested because they don't seem to be finding ways to make money off it. Which, in my opinion, should not be on the transaction, but also should be through other means built on top of the money coming in into those accounts, like lending and other value-added services. So I mean that primarily it's because it costs money, as well as it costs even more money for merchants and other players to operate in the documented space, which we as retailers and e-commerce companies who are tax compliant already find a big challenge.
All right. So essentially, this is a private sector problem and like not a government problem. It's the private sector that wants to, let's say, not pay its fair share of taxes, or manage double books, so on and so forth. It's the banks who are like, why should we even bother with this? So, I mean, this is more of a private sector problem than a public sector, or let's say a government problem, because the rails are there. why any tech development isn't happening, why any logistics player is not taking it seriously or just trying to actually. And I just feel if you go digital payments, your throughput or your volume should actually increase. I personally hate doing COD. I refuse to do online shopping in Pakistan. I do it anywhere else. I won't do it here. I'd rather go and buy it from store rather than get it from here, because just managing the whole financial logistics of it is a massive pain. I just feel there exists a big case to completely digitize all payments in this, and the private sector, frankly, has failed in doing literally anything about it here.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think I definitely agree with that. But there is also a case to be made for the fact that the difference of just operating on cash, despite its inconvenience, despite the handling cost, despite the risks, security risks, is the fact that you have a 20-25% difference when it comes to your bottom line. And so it's a chicken and egg issue also, right? You've got an issue where you've got the competition operating in cash. What's the other going? How the other one going to scale when the competition is priced lower or incentivized to do so lower? So I think it's a chicken and egg issue, and it needs a transition. It needs actually, if you ask me, also catalysts. For example, if you got mass market catalysts to ensure that people are putting money or paying money or paying digitally or keeping money digitally, I think that would make a huge difference. I mean, for example, let me give you a small example. I mean, because of the fact that in small merchants, people are paying not by card, but they're paying by either IBFT or RAS P2P, person to person directly into a personal account. They're happy doing that. The MDR is not there, 2.5%. Number two, your bank account is a personal account. You can manage it into multiple personal accounts. People are actually paying digitally, even if they're not in the tax net. You go to a small shop, they'll take a Jazz Cash Easy Pesa payment. They'll take an IBFT payment, RAF payment ideally. So there's no charges, and they're happy doing so. So there is a convenience definitely there. It also needs to. So I think if you ask me, in a way, P2P, like you said, the rails are already there. It's just about pushing and encouraging people just to use digital payment, which they're already using. And a lot of people who are using them in bank accounts and getting money and going out, these are smaller, obviously, ticket things, and they're not really worried about tax because at the moment they're not worried about tax, but we'll see down the line what happens.
So again, I think this will be my final question on tax. How do we create a fair playing field for everyone? I totally agree with you. One party is paying tax, the other isn't. The one that isn't paying is definitely more competitive in terms of price. How do we ensure everyone's at at the same competitive level? What one intervention do you think can make this happen?
The one intervention that we should do, but we can't do for whatever reason, is that we have to lower the tax rate, make it so low, make it so easy that then people are not worried about paying it. It's for them, it's not a big deal, right? So now, so they're willing to pay. So, for example, your sales tax, your income tax, that's I think the rate has to be lowered. Yes, there'll be a temporary hit, but if you can enable, I mean, you can build that environment where you can encourage people just to go ahead. I mean, for example, back a few years ago, over 5 years ago, when there were lower sales tax rates and income tax rates for retailers and others, you had a good chance to adopt. But then there's no continuity of policy, so nobody the person who sits outside the tax net is much happier. They don't care what budget comes, what doesn't come in the budget, because they know. But we don't have any 5-year, 10-year clarity roadmap, even for taxes, for example. You don't know. So I think number one is a lower flat tax. We have to find ways to do that, and of course, predictability, continuity of that tax policy. I think that's the major one. As well as when we do things like, I'll give a small example just to conclude on that, is that we're trying things like a reduced rate for restaurants. For example, in Sindh, they just introduced 8% sales tax against a 15% sales tax. In Punjab, you've had a 5% against a 16%. The problem with these is you create these sort of distortions within the tax code itself, which people don't realize, the customers don't realize. Is it one is allowing input tax adjustment, the other one is not allowing input tax adjustment. That's already something a business is paying. So they have to then, if they're going to go on a lower rate, it's going to cost them more, and they might even have to raise their prices. That's why you're seeing large chains not adopt the lower reduced sales tax on restaurants. There are there are distortions there. So whenever we do implement incentives, we do, in my opinion, it's always going to fail because we always include this sort of caveat that you can do it like this, which makes no sense. I mean, the same thing has happened for POS retailers. I mean, over the time, you've seen the compliance not increase because there was a POS price scheme for customers, things like that. So we do things and then we stop it, and that creates a vicious cycle of lack of trust and failures of ideas or regimes, tax regimes.
That fully agreed with you on distortionate pricing and lack of trust. Thank you, Asfandyar, for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully, we'll see you
Same
soon.
here.